Today, for the very first time, journalist unions right across Europe are taking concerted action on the issue of quality of journalism, quality of work that journalists do, and the future of the media. And the reason they're taking this concerted action is because there is widespread concern about journalism and the future of journalism as we have known it. Not all of us have been entirely of the view that journalism has been great, journalism has done has honoured its profession and its values and its aspirations to do good for society. But I think almost every single journalist who's working today must be concerned and must have some anxiety about the capacity of journalism to function as a mission to do good for society for the future. And there are a number of issues which journalist unions across Europe and the European Federation of Journalists today are highlighting. And there are two main issues. The first issue arises because we live in troubled times. Over the past few years, we have seen throughout Europe a far more intrusive approach as far as journalism and media are concerned by the governments of Europe. Even in the settled democracies of Europe, in the name of security, in the name of the security agenda, we have seen the rolling back of fundamental freedoms and civil liberties. Journalists are having their phones routinely tapped. Spies have been put into the newsrooms in some major media in Germany and elsewhere, so that the authorities can find out who journalists are talking to. There have been more cases of trying to discover the confidential sources of information that journalists have than there have ever been. There is more suspicion about media and the role of media, more spin, more attempt to control directly what media, the message that media are giving. We've had journalists in the Netherlands, famously the Dutch journalists describe it as being kidnapped because they wouldn't say who their sources of information are. We've had an unprecedented prosecution in Denmark, never before, where 3 journalists were prosecuted, not because they told lies, not because they did anything which was against the public interest, but because actually they embarrassed the government of the day. So when you have this situation in the settled democracies of Europe, journalists are rightly concerned that there is an atmosphere being created which is inhibiting quality journalism and investigative journalism. And that is dangerous. It's dangerous for democracy, and it's dangerous for the capacity of journalists to do their work. The second issue, besides the problem of living in troubled times, the second issue is that the industry is in turmoil. The industry, the media industry in Europe, transfixed by the need to re-examine its role in the information marketplace, unable to cope in many areas with the process of change, are resorting to almost panic-stricken measures to try to maintain levels of profitability at a time of falling circulation and decline of audience in prime-time television. The consequences of this are known to every single journalist who's working in Europe today. There is not a journalist who doesn't know about the impact of savage cuts in editorial departments, the fact that journalism is a precarious profession, the fact that there are thousands of young people today in Europe's journalism schools who will not have a job when they graduate, the fact that there are more and more freelancers or so-called fake and false journalists, the fact that there's less investment in investigative journalism and in training. Never before, even in the 40 years that I've been associated with this profession, never before has there been a crisis of such dimension. It's true, people are receiving information and giving information in new ways, thanks to new technologies that open up all sorts of changes which are important, including changes in the market structure of how media operate. And it is true that the old style media, traditional media based on publishing and based on broadcasting is finished. It's going to change. That change may come in 10 years, it may come in 15 years, it may come in 20 years, but we are all certain that it's going to change. And yet, when every single major media publisher, worthy of the name, who understands the market, insists that quality of content is essential to drive the future for media, in almost every single media organisation, quality of content is being damaged by cuts in editorial investment. When this is the time to be investing in quality journalism, employers and editors are cutting quality journalism. There's less editing, there's less confidence in the ethical and traditional structure. That's why today, Stand Up for Journalism is a campaign which has touched a nerve right across Europe, right across the network of journalist organisations that we represent. In every country, Belgium, Croatia, Cyprus, Finland, Sweden, Great Britain, the Ukraine, Switzerland, Germany, France, Italy, everywhere, journalists are, for once, able to stand together to say what is happening is a crisis too far for modern journalism. We have to change, and we have to enter into a new dialogue with employers and with the authorities about the future of journalism. This is not about confrontation. This is not about creating a battleground over the future. This is about creating the democratic conditions, dialogue, and for a new democracy within the media structure. That's the context for today's meeting. I'm glad you've been able to join us, and I've got a couple of speakers before Thomas Hammerberg arrives. We're going to add to what I've said and perhaps give a completely different perspective. First of all, I'd like to ask Lorenzo Cruzzoli from API, who's known to you all, the organisation that so effectively represents the foreign correspondents here in Brussels. It's also with us and with the National Union of Journalists and with the European Journalism Centre and with the Belgian Association of Journalists. It also forms part of the Journalists at Your Service network that we've created here at the Residence Palace with the support of the Residence Palace. API and the JAYS process is very much supporting what the journalist organisations are doing today. We're very grateful for that support. I'm glad you're able to join us, and the floor is yours.
Good morning to everybody. I'm Lorenzo Consoli, the chairman of the International Press Association, API in the French way. What I want to tell you today is just about our specific role in Brussels as journalists that every day are confronted to manipulation attempts by the institutions, which is our main role. Hi. Here, I just want to start with one reflection. Sometimes in our work we are confronted with the necessity for us to work as watchdogs of democracy, watchdogs of against manipulation, against distortion of the facts, against politically oriented information. The concept of watchdog of journalism, the concept of civic journalism, which is more a French idea, the very concepts are sometimes put into question. They are put into question by this process that we are seeing now going on. There is a clear attempt to reduce the role of journalists to some people that